Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your precious time. My name is Jennifer, and I am the Principal Advisor of J. Sullivan Advisors. We are so excited to have Sarah Sladek joining us again for a brain break today. And I can't wait to introduce those of you who didn't meet her last month in our last brain break. Our hope with this brain break series is to give you about 30 minutes where you can just slow down and relax a little bit. Now, more than ever, there's so much noise in this world and uncertainty. And what we hope is that we can give you an opportunity to just stop taking care of things, push back from your desk a little bit, and relax and hear some positivity. As I said, Sarah is rejoining us. She's one of very few brain break speakers who is doing a repeat performance. We are really excited to have her with us today. And first, let me tell you a little bit about J. Sullivan Advisors. We are a boutique hospitality consultancy serving meetings and event management services for any type or any size of corporation or association. We can assist with pieces of the meeting planning process or the entire process itself, whatever you need, anything from site selection to sourcing to contract negotiation to, to being extra staffing on site for your actual programs. As I said, we are here to supplement your existing staffs and do some of the behind the scenes work to make your programs even stronger. And I think there are two main things that make J. Sullivan Advisors a little bit different than in other independent planners or incentive houses. First, like in independent planners, we are very high touch, but low overhead, which means we can pass that savings along to you. But we are a team. So unlike independent planners, if something were to happen to your main planner, there are 7 of us standing behind your lead planner. So you've got the peace of mind and assurance of knowing that someone is always available to help you regardless of illness or anything unexpected. The second thing that makes us unique is the dynamic makeup of our team. And I'll share a picture with you here because some of these faces may look familiar. We have very seasoned and savvy meeting planners as part of our team with Sharon Chapman, formerly with Guardian Insurance, Janice Stern, formerly with Voya, and Tanima Garvey, formerly with BMW and Mini. The other half of our team is very seasoned and experienced luxury hoteliers with Michelle Babin, Joanne Peart, Kelly Wood-Stalmer, and myself, all coming from the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company. And as I said, we work together on every single program, bringing each of these different perspectives to your event, making it that much stronger. Collectively, we are strategists, we are relationship builders, and we are magic makers. We are passionate about travel. We are passionate about building loyalty through events, and we are passionate about serving others. We would certainly love to put all of these passions and our experience to work for you. So I will reach out in the next couple of days and make sure that we're staying in touch and find out more about how we might be able to assist you with your upcoming programs, which we are faithful will be coming back to face in the next year. So again, thank you for giving me the time to tell you a little bit more about our company. And now the real reason you guys are all here is Sarah Sladek. Sarah has been described as a talent economy influencer and referred to as a social equity expert. When organizations were started experiencing a decline in engagement and couldn't identify why, Sarah really jumped in to solve the problem, looking at research, tons and tons of research on the next generations, what motivates them, how their brains develop, and how all this plays out in a professional setting. Last month, she shared with us some trends, which that video is still available if you're interested in seeing that on the J. Sullivan Advisors website. And today she's going to take an in-depth look at how to build teamwork with these younger professionals and during this turbulent time. So Without further ado, Sarah, thank you for joining us again.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. It is an honor to be here, not just once, but twice. Oh my gosh. So special thanks to Sullivan Advisors for hosting the Brain Break. Today, we are talking about team building in a turbulent time. It is a crazy time, right? I want to welcome you to the end of work as we know it. And as ominous as that might sound, we know that we are indeed at the end of an era. And we know that for three key reasons. The first one being the economy. Ever since the dot-com bubble burst, the economy has been unpredictable, unstable, extreme highs, extreme lows, and that changes employee expectations, it changes consumerism, it changes all types of things, as does this era of rapidly changing technology. We've been living through an era of very fast growth in terms of technology, and we've never really stopped to think about it, but we've had more technology developed in the past few years than in the previous 50. So that's changing everything about the way we live, work, and do business, and it's yet another reason we are at the end of an era. And the third reason we know that we are at the end of work as we know it is the demographic shift. So at the end of 2015, for the first time in over 34 years, yes, in over 3 decades, we had a shift in the workforce majority. For the first time in 34 years, millennials became the workforce majority rather than the boomers. And so all of a sudden, our workforce started trending younger as opposed to trending older. And this is introducing all kinds of change to our teams, to how we manage talent, and just these 3 things in particular create an environment that is new and different and challenging for all of us. But then we add in a global pandemic, and there's yet another wave of change. And we add in the awareness of social inequities, and we see an entire generation out protesting and rallying for change. And that too is creating a new lens for us to look at teams and talent, how we work, where we work, when we work. And it's creating challenges for our organizations to quickly adapt, to adapt faster than ever. And of course, right now, we are in the midst of the Great Resignation. And it seems like we just woke up and all of a sudden the resignation was here. But I'm going to tell you shortly that we've been on this path for a while. I'm first going to pause and ask Jennifer to launch a poll. And fingers crossed, the poll works. Okay, it should be appearing on your screen. There's 2 parts. First part, which of the following best describes how most people are feeling in your current work environment? I'd like to know, are people, most people, feeling inspired and happy, optimistic and hopeful, overwhelmed and stressed, or miserable and likely job hunting? So weigh in on that. If you're having any difficulty taking the poll, then instead put it into the chat. Put your answer in the chat if you're having difficulty with the poll. The second question I'm asking there is, compared to 6 months ago, what's happening with team morale? Is team morale higher or about the same? Higher or about the same? So again, if you're having difficulty with the poll, then answer in the chat. And Jennifer, as you see the results coming in, if you just go ahead and give it a second, okay, and share the results. Now, I'm not seeing the results on my end, so I'm hoping you're seeing them on your end.
I am not, dang it.
Okay, we had difficulty with this last time. So
back in the comments here. So
okay, great.
People are saying lower team morale, stressed. Some are feeling happy and inspired, but other are feeling overwhelmed and stressed.
Okay. All right. So continue to add comments as you can. I'm curious to know where you fall in that spectrum. How are people feeling? And what's team morale doing? All right, so this great resignation, holy cow. All of a sudden we woke up, it seems like anyway, and we've had major workforce change, lots of turnover, people leaving, people switching jobs, people retiring. It's major turnover, and quit rates are higher than ever. But the fact is, we knew this was coming. We've known this for quite some time. In fact, in the year 2000, Gallup started researching workforce engagement, and year after year after year, Gallup reported that 70% of our workforce was disengaged. What? What happened to all of a sudden create all this disengagement? But also, why didn't we pay attention? And if we were paying attention, why didn't our efforts work? And how did we get to this point, this boiling over point, where we had millions of people leaving their jobs? But more importantly, how do we get back to building teams and managing talent? Here and now, the Society for Human Resource Management is saying that we have almost half of the workforce saying that culture has just diminished. And so many times we're blaming pandemic for this, but really pandemic was just merely the accelerator that brought everything to the forefront and to a crisis situation. We have almost half of the workforce saying they feel less connected to the company, and almost 60% saying they're experiencing stress and burnout, which is where that overwhelm comes into play. So if you answered that team morale is lower or that you're feeling stressed, you are certainly not alone. Many workforces are experiencing this. And we're hearing people refer to this era as the war for talent, literally life or death type of situation. We struggle to find the words to explain the significance of what our workforce is experiencing right now. So we refer to it as a war, as a tsunami, as a time of real turbulence. In other words, something that is out of our control, but it's very much within our control. We just don't know it. We don't know how to manage it. One of my clients is a Fortune 500 company, and I recently did a presentation for them, and I interviewed the leaders ahead of time. Here were some of the quotes that the leaders made. It has been a long, arduous ride. There are so many unknowns, and if anything is clear, it's that a lot is unclear. If you are feeling that way right now, believe me, there is a solution. There is definitely a solution. Right now, though, so many organizations are freaking out. They're saying, how on earth, in an era such as this one, in this time of incredible change and turbulence and disruption, how do we team build? How do we rally people back together again? That's a very worthwhile and important question to be pondering. As we look at this multi-generational workforce, one thing that we tend to overlook is that right now, for the first time in history, everyone has something to learn and something to teach. That in and of itself is pretty radical, because we've had hierarchy since caveman days. It was the idea that everyone gathered around the elder and learned from the elder of any given society. However, as a result of increased access to information and technology and media and brand new skill sets emerging, we're beginning to realize that every generation has something to learn, something to teach, but we're not exactly capitalizing on that. There is another way of looking at teams and at talent management and at all the change that's happening in our workplaces. It's not just multi-generational. We're actually seeing a breakdown between industrial era managed organizations and post-industrial managed organizations. So baby boomers and Gen Xers are actually the last generations of the industrial era. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, Sarah, that sounds crazy, because the industrial era was founded in the 1700s. There's no way we are still in an industrial era. Well, reflect on this, think about it. In the industrial era, everything had a process and a structure and a hierarchy. You would do A and then B and then C. You would start your career here and work your way up the ladder. Everything was very linear in its process and its thinking. However, for the generations that have been raised since 1982, these are the post-industrial generations. These generations have been raised during an era that's definitely not linear. In fact, everything's kind of chaotic. Everything is flexible, mobile, remote. There's globalization and customization and a whole lot of change, a whole lot of innovation and creativity. This generation is not used to linear thinking and processes. They're on demand, they're instant gratification. It's a totally different mindset. So what we find is this gap between the industrial era thinking and managed organizations, which tend to be run by hierarchy and focus on profits and celebrate experience and seek to be reliable and manage people and maintain status quo and focus on the work, talk a lot about the past. There's this whole tug of war when post-industrial raised generations come into the workplace and they have a completely different mindset. These generations have been referred to as being raised during a talent economy, because we're realizing the importance and significance of human capital. And it's the opposite in almost every way. These organizations celebrate collaboration and put people first. They seek to be innovative, adaptable, to lead the way. They focus on disrupting the norms and their purpose, and they talk a lot about the future. So a question for you to contemplate is, okay, which column best describes your organization? Are you more industrial thinking and managed or more post-industrial thinking and managed? It's important to note that there's differences, not only in these organization types, but in how we lead and manage people and how we think about talent and how we approach team building. For the industrial raised generations, they judge themselves and one another based on results and professionalism. For the post-industrial raised generations, they judge themselves and one another based on potential and ambition. As a result, we hear things like, may I have the job because I have the desire to learn. And then we'll hear, but you are just out of college. There's no way you can have that executive job. You have to prove yourself. You have to work your way up the ladder. You have to pay your dues, right? So conflict emerges. But also we see post-industrial raised generations, they tend to learn by experience because that's how the workforce has worked in the past. Again, pay your dues, work your way up the ladder. But for the post-industrial raised generations, they learn by doing. They Google answers, they YouTube videos. They like to be hands-on, they're interactive learners. So they are always asking, can I be job shadowing? Can I be mentored? Can I have the opportunity to jump in and lead this initiative, this task, or this committee? We see many other ways that there's differences, but really what it boils down to are three key questions between these groups of people. There's constantly these conflicts about how work is done, when it's done, where it's done, and we're seeing this now more than ever in this pandemic world when there's certain individuals and organizations saying, I just want to go back to normal, quote unquote. And then we have other post-industrial raised generations saying, it's got to be virtual, baby. It's got to be hybrid. This is the way of the future. You got to get used to it. There isn't right and there isn't wrong. There's just simply difference. And you've got to be aware of those differences if you want to engage people. You see, when we talk about employee engagement, what we're really talking about is whether there's an existing relationship. Engagement is an emotional commitment. It's about caring. It's about feeling valued and respected, feeling like you belong. When you belong, you feel like you have a sense of ownership in something. When you belong, you feel like you have a secure relationship. And that's when you feel like you are an engaged part of a team. But engaging people is impossible. It's absolutely impossible until you understand them. And clearly, I've just demonstrated that if you're only looking through one lens, whether that's industrial or post-industrial, if you're only looking through one lens, you're not truly understanding your workforce. You can only understand people when you actually are intentional about building a relationship with them. Now it sounds very much like going back to kindergarten and something a kindergarten teacher would say to you, but you would be surprised at how much this tug of war plays throughout organizations and conflicts, and there's silos and there's hierarchies. And we have an entire business just trying to get companies to actually dialogue and work side by side with one another, to get rid of these silos and hierarchies from throughout the industrial era, to actually build relationships and truly listen to what someone from another generation has to say. It's very difficult to manage change when you're afraid of it. Research shows that we all, to some degree, have a fear of change. And our organizations clearly have a fear of change. It's scary. It's very scary because we're afraid of failure. Change could mean that you try something and it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, well, that could mean a loss of revenues. So these fears just spur, they spin out of control. And they spur more and more fears. What we have to do is be able to overcome that sense of fear. That change should be welcome. It should be embraced. And there is a way to overcome that fear. I'll bring that up momentarily. But the other thing is we have these fears because we have a tradition of creating these leadership rooms filled with people who have similar backgrounds, skill sets, and experiences. In other words, hierarchies, which have become echo chambers. So if you have an entire decision-making entity where everyone resembles pretty much the same age or demographic or background or skill set, and it's not diversified in terms of cognitive diversity, we're not truly able to make decisions that are representative of our entire workforce or our entire community. That's not effective. But what if I also told you something else that's making change extremely difficult is the fact that we pay people to do more of the same? What? That sounds crazy as well, Sarah. Well, think about much of this last century. Around the middle of this last century, we had an economic boom. It was a post-war era. It's when baby boomers started being born. And there was this idea that if we start producing more widgets faster, then we can make more money. And then there was this idea that, hey, we should compensate the leaders of the organizations that are making more widgets and leading their companies to make more money. We'll compensate the executives and senior level managers because they're the ones that are inspiring all the growth and leading all the growth. Well, in 1975, executive pay was 24 times worker pay. But today, executive pay is over 300 times worker pay. So we've continued to pay our leaders more and more money to do more and more of the same. So when someone comes and taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, I think you should change something. Do we really want to change when we're already making the money and getting paid to do more of the same? No. So our organizations get stuck. And that relationship becomes more and more frayed. Those conflicts become more and more prevalent. Turnover begins to increase. people become more stressed, become less productive, less profitable, and more unhappy. And as a result, since the year 2000, we've had over 70% of our workforce continuously disengaged. Okay, so what's the answer? What do we do to fix it? We have to collaborate. We have to work together. We have to literally bring people from that industrial era thinking to work side by side with post-industrial thinkers. When we can collaborate like that and co-create the future, our organizations are considerably more innovative, productive, profitable, and boast higher employee engagement. I know this for a fact. I have studied this in great detail. I have been out there researching and having conversations with the most successful organizations in existence today. And this, above all else, is what all those organizations do very, very well. They collaborate. They bring experienced workers to work side by side with new young workers. And everyone has a voice and they contribute continually. You see, when you collaborate and you bring people from the red column and the blue column, if you will, red and blue makes purple, which is why I use those arrows and that color. They collaborate together, they co-create continuously. That creates more empathy for one another. You're starting to see things from each other's points of view. You're starting to learn and teach one another. You're starting to build trust and relationships with one another. Your teams get stronger. There's a stronger sense of ownership, and you have that secure relationship. So everyone's feeling more of a commitment, an emotional commitment. And as a result, you have higher employee engagement. That idea of empathy is absolutely crucial to the success of our organizations. New research out of New York University this year, just a few months ago, says that workplace hostility is off the charts. It's higher than ever, especially hostility towards incoming young professionals. This is the elephant in the room that not many people like to spend time talking about, this idea of age discrimination. We've had it as part of our tradition and throughout the industrial era and even before then, that idea children are seen and not heard. Youth should not be given a voice. You have to earn a seat at the table. But as I have already explained, we are in a new era and we have to approach team building and talent management differently. We have to be accepting of new ideas, new people, and we have to find a way to work collaboratively together. When the founders of Google came out with their technology, yeah, they had a radical new technology concept that people just couldn't even envision. And the idea of search engines or search engine optimization or internet search, it was so out of the box thinking. But not only the technology was out of the box, the idea of how Google wanted to create teams and manage talent was completely out of the box and unheard of. Up to this point, having a job was just enough. Be happy that you have a job. Be happy that you have work. That's all that people really want. And they said, no. We believe that if we create a company that is based on giving people meaningful work, knowledge of what's happening in their environment, and the opportunity to shape that environment, we will achieve higher employee engagement, higher productivity, and higher profitability. Were they right? Absolutely. So let's break that down. What's that mean for you? Meaningful work means in your organization, making sure people understand their purpose and their place within the organization. It's making sure people are always challenged, always learning. It's making sure that people know that their work makes a difference to the big picture. It's making sure people feel respected, they feel that ownership, and they feel valued. Again, it makes complete sense when you think about it, and yet we are failing at practicing this. and delivering on this in our workplaces. And that's what's contributing to the turnover. How about knowledge of what's happening in your environment? We have more tech tools and platforms than ever before. It's as simple as virtual team meetings, town halls, doing CEO chats via video chats, creating Slack channels. There are multiple, hundreds of thousands of ways that you can make sure you're communicating, and multiple tools for doing so in today's work environment. And yet communication tends to be one of those reasons that people feel they don't belong. They say, I don't know what's happening. I don't know my purpose, and I don't know that it makes a difference. So I'm out of here. We have to do better at communicating and giving people knowledge of what's happening in the environment, and give them the opportunity to shape that environment. And again, there are multiple ways to do this, from suggestion boxes to letting them vote for the employee of the month, to taking surveys, to, again, coffee chats, town halls, asking people their opinion. Getting their voices, their buy-in is absolutely key to team building and talent management in today's environment. We have to stop the tug of war. The tug of war between industrial era thinking and raised workers and post-industrial thinking and raised workers. It's become very, very toxic to our workplaces. It's repeatedly being cited as the source in multiple research projects as the core problem in team building and talent management, and a core contributor to workplace turnover. We can fix this. We can fix this. But it means that we have to break down those silos and be willing to build relationships. Now, if you are not in a leadership role where you can say for the whole entire company, this is something new and different we're going to do, that's okay. But you can influence change even within your role, even within your department, even in your day-to-day attitudes and approaches to work. Remember that employee engagement is the outcome of building an organization. You'll know when people are engaged because there's an air of excitement, of inspiration. People feel that their work is fulfilling and fun. They want to show up for work. They look forward to it. They will actually say things like, I am so happy to be here. I am so lucky to be able to work with this company or this team. This is a blast. I don't think of work as a job. Time goes fast. If people aren't using those types of phrases to describe their work environment, then they probably aren't engaged. And you have work to do. You can make a choice. Don't wait on someone else to make the choice. You can make a choice. You can do little things to begin team building within whatever circle of influence you have in your organization. To begin to be able to ask the opinions, give people knowledge, and be able to value that idea of collaboration. You come to work with an attitude every single day. You can choose to be collaborative, or you can choose to create hierarchies and silos. But whatever the future brings, because we will continue to change. Change is a constant. There will continue to be more disruption. Whatever comes next, whoever comes next, I urge you to embrace the challenge. It's not a time to stress. It's a time to innovate. It's not a time to feel that you can't do this. It's a time to think about how can we create the future and do so together in collaboration. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you team build and manage talent in this time of incredible turbulence. I'm Sarah Sladek, and I want to thank J. Sullivan Advisors once again for inviting me to come back to part 2 of the Brain Break. How fabulous to be here. Jennifer, do you want to open it up for some questions?
Sure, sure. Thank you again, Sarah. And I was remiss in sharing that Sarah oversees 3 different companies, all with this focus of collecting the data, translating it into how it affects the organizations, and then consulting with other companies about how they can implement everything the data is telling us to do. So she's available as a consultant, as a speaker, and I will include Sarah's information in my follow-up email so you can get in touch with her directly. So Sarah, anything you want to add to that? I feel like we just got a little bit of a snapshot of so much more that you're able to do, but there is so much more that you're able to do.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jennifer. No, that was good. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one question here is that, are there companies that you have worked with or recommend that we could benchmark, companies that did have that hierarchical industrial era structure mentality that have succeeded in letting go of that tension and really embracing the post-industrial workers?
Mm-hmm. So there are many, but one that comes to mind is EY, which used to be known as Ernst & Young. About 8 years ago, EY kind of took a hard look within and said, we have to make some radical changes. We have been around for a long time. We are one of those legacy companies, and we want to continue to be around for the future. So they did a lot of internal reflection, visionary planning. Ernst & Young is completely revamped everything from their marketing to how they manage teams. And now you will find them doing, high school town halls. They're always focused on the future, being visionary. They're taking the lead and doing some research on robotics and artificial intelligence, and really, really trying to be very visionary in their approaches to how they team build and manage talent. And as of right now, their average employee age has reduced as well. They've brought in a lot of young talent, and again, putting young talent next to experienced talent, it's created higher engagement and profitability overall. So that's one example.
What do you say to the senior leader who feels threatened by the younger colleagues? Do you encourage them to embrace what the opportunity to learn?
Absolutely. So I would ask, what's your succession plan? And you want to make sure your organization is here to stay. There's so much change. There's so many more jobs, so many more companies for young people to choose from, so many career trajectories for young people to choose from. But this workforce crisis has been so significant for so long. As I mentioned, it was first really noted in the year 2000 that employee engagement was going down. And just a few years ago, the United Nations actually recognized that we have a workforce crisis. It's a chief global concern. This isn't just a United States issue. And they actually ushered up a call to all organizations of all sizes. They call the initiative Youth 2030. And they have said that we have to make a major shift to how we manage talent and build teams. And we have to start not just working for youth, but actually beginning to work side by side with youth, and to be very mindful of our future trajectories, because we're losing talent. Turnover is so incredibly high, and we have to approach this differently.
Got it. So we are exceeding our time, but you have so much to look into in more depth if you're interested. EY, and then I have never heard of this Youth 2030 initiative, and to hear that it's global is comforting in some ways, but discouraging that there's this initiative out there that I've never even heard of. So yeah. Kudos to you for bringing awareness to this issue and teaching people how to get in front of the curve with it.
Yes, absolutely. It's absolutely critical. The future's here. It's now. We got to start working on it and making it a priority.
And I love what you said about just reframing it. It's not a threat. It's not something to be afraid of. It's an opportunity. So often with the greatest amount of disruption comes the best and most profound learnings. So
exactly.
Reframe it. It's an opportunity. It's not scary. And look for people like Sarah who can guide you through it. So thank you so much, Sarah, again, for being with us. Thank you to everyone who has joined us today for giving us 40 minutes of your precious time. We definitely appreciate it. We wish you a very, very happy holiday season, and we look forward to staying in touch throughout the new year. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Bye-bye.
Bye.